Unfortunately, most of us are just rewarding, well done, you won the game. Well done, you got a blue ribbon. These are outcome-based. And kids, unfortunately, we're learning our self-worth is predicated on outcome, which is conditional, which is shame. I'm not loved enough until I achieve that. But there's such a different way for kids to learn that they are loved well enough, and success is not outcome-based, it's process-based.
Mindset and leadership coach and author of Where the Light Gets In, Ben Crowe from Mojo.
This is Sportish. I'm Libby Trickett, Olympic swimmer and professional people mover of 5 small humans.
And I'm Georgie Trickett. Like Libby, I'm constantly behind the wheel of my car taking my kids to sport. And unlike Libby, I'd describe myself more as a social swimmer.
Cannot tumble turn, but we love her anyway.
This series of Sportish is powered by Play Well, a movement from the Australian Sports Commission that's about making sure everyone has a place in sport.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Sportish. Ben, I would love to start with what your earliest connection to sport was.
Oh, my earliest connection to sport, I reckon I was about 4 or 5 years old. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and I was lucky our parents were very much into us playing outdoors. My brothers and sisters are much older than me, so I have vivid memories of playing football on my own in the park, using my imagination to have fictitious opponents, and the trees were goals, and I always won the game, Lib. I always won the grand final.
Classic.
I always kicked the winning goal after the siren too. So
that is an incredible feat, Ben. Well done.
I know. I never actually did it in real life, but in my imagination as a young boy, that definitely set me on my journey, and I fell in love with all sports after that. I was playing basketball, cricket, I was playing football. I got into surfing and boogie boarding and swimming later on in life. Not quite as to your standards. I was a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. But yeah, sport from a very early age has become a really important part of my personal life and then professional life after that.
When you finished school and went on to study, you kind of did anthropology, you did philosophy, you've studied literature as part of your arts degree, and then somehow through all of that you made your way to the International Director of Sports at Nike. Do you feel like that childhood of being a jack of all trades in terms of sport led to that career, or do you feel like it was just a happy accident?
It's a bit of both, Lib. Yeah, I think our early play history definitely informs and forms who we become as adults. And a lot of it is in terms of our interests and being curious about our interests and then seeing how they happen. I was the youngest of 6, as I mentioned, and my brothers and sisters are doctors and nurses and teachers and lawyers. I think I wanted to be a wannabe of all of those things. And when my dad died when I was 16, I had this itch that I couldn't scratch, just trying to make sense of the world, right? And how some people could navigate it well and some people couldn't. Some people had really good perspectives and some people didn't. And when I studied at university, those subjects that you mentioned, I remember thinking at the time, when the hell am I ever going to look? I don't even know why I chose those subjects, right? Let alone how am I going to use them? And then you fast forward 30 years, and that's literally all I do, right? I didn't realize that anthropology was the study of humans and human behavior. Philosophy was the study of wisdom and storytelling. And when I work with athletes to help them make sense of their story and the stories that they're telling themselves. But yeah, at the time I didn't realize. And then when I joined Nike, that itch got even more pronounced when I saw elite athletes get so distracted by extrinsic motivation, which is typically money and fame and status and recognition. And some of their falls are pretty famous, right? Tiger Woods and Lance Armstrong. And I realized that athletes that went internal, not external, and Andre Agassi is a great case study. Ash Barty is a great case study here in Australia. They were able to separate what they did from who they were. So their identity became more of the human being and less so the human doing. But yeah, I think you're right. I think definitely part of my curiosity, my playful curiosity, even the subjects that I chose at history to do at university, definitely informed later on in life my curiosity with athletes in particular about why they got so distracted in terms of their perspective, which was a hobby that I guess became a career.
It's really interesting you talk about that experience of Nike. At that time, Nike was known for their storytelling. It was absolutely part of what they brought to the sporting world. How did that storytelling and that approach to storytelling then influence how you went on to become, I guess, such a pivotal mindset coach to so many people?
Yeah, it was at Nike I really learnt not only the power of storytelling, but the power of play. And that's where I understood these principles. But I also realized that athletes weren't very good at telling their own story. And a lot of them, they were caught up in the persona of who they were and not the person of who they were. And I was really interested that if someone can help understand who they are and separate their self-worth from their business card, the person from the persona, and more importantly, celebrate their story and in particular the imperfections, the things that we think are weaknesses that we want to hide away. But often that's the gold. We didn't realize it's imperfections that connect humans the most. And part of that is our story, right? So if we can learn to accept our imperfections, we don't take all that baggage onto the tennis court or into the swimming pool. And we can realize that's part of being human. Doesn't mean we don't believe we're worthy. It just means we don't have to believe we have to be this perfect image of ourselves. So I understood the separation probably early on at Nike when I realized that athletes that understood this principle just removed so much pressure and had the freedom to, compete, have fun and play. And so that took me on a very different journey, more internal storytelling than external storytelling. And it was more a hobby than a career. After I left Nike, I continued to mentor athletes that I worked with, but then morphed when I came back to Australia to mentoring coaches and then teams and executive teams and teenagers and hospitals and so forth. And then during COVID, it went kind of crazy, right, where the whole world was pretty distracted in terms of the stories we were telling ourselves. And yeah, I learned along the journey that, our life story is not our life, it's just our story. And we're the authors of it. We are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. But we've got that reptilian brain with a negativity bias. It's like, Velcro for negative and Teflon for positive. We don't really understand that our belief system gets shaped by the stories we tell ourselves, as does our philosophy of life, right? It's quite liberating for people when they can learn that skill. But where do we go to learn that, right? There's no such thing as human being school where you can learn to be a human being first and and an athlete second. So I think that's been really a fascination of mine, and then putting it into practice along the journey has been a privilege of a lifetime.
I have been so excited about this conversation for so long, and mostly because of what you have just been touching on there, because I think for me as an elite athlete, I had so much of my self-worth aligned with my performance and aligned with achieving. And even when I achieved the thing that I was going for, that became not enough, even though it might have been something that I'd been working towards for ages. It's like, oh, okay, I won an Olympic gold medal, but the hole inside me hasn't actually been filled. So I must need another one. I must need another gold medal or another world record. Has that been something that you've seen a lot of with the athletes that you've worked with, that real difficulty with being able to separate your self-worth and performance? And I guess, how do you navigate that with the people that you're mentoring?
Yeah. How long have we got, Lib?
All day, Ben.
Talk for a few days on this topic, right? So we all have the same two needs, right? The need for attachment and the need for authenticity. Attachment means that I'm worthy of love and belonging and connection, right? Just as I am, right? That's that unconditional love. Authenticity means the courage to be me and live a life true to me. Now, attachment trumps authenticity. So if I don't believe I'm worthy of love and belonging and connection, I'm going to go searching for it to the detriment of having the courage to be me and live a life true to me. So, and we get lost. We think if I win a gold medal, then I'll be worthy, then I'll be enough. right? So we start looking for it extrinsically in money and fame and medals and so forth, but it just never works, right? Because it's conditional. We constantly feel like we have to do something and achieve something in order to be someone. So we've lost that art of just being a human being first. And we're all caught up in this distraction as well. This is a global epidemic at the moment that we're living through. We're in this gap mentality where I'm here, but I need to be there. It never works because, as you said, the goalposts just keep moving. So what we try and teach people is rather than being in that scarcity mentality, that gap mentality that creates that cortisol and that expectation and that pressure, there's such a better way to live your life. And that's to measure backwards, not forwards. So rather than saying, I know I'll be successful when, you redefine success through an intrinsic lens, not an extrinsic lens, by saying, I know I'm being successful when. Because if I got you two to do a new success list, rather than saying, I know I'll be successful when I win that medal or I get that prize or I make that $1 million or I get that new house, you reframe success to say, I know I'm being successful when. And you might answer that by, when I train really hard every day, or I have a belly laugh with my best friend, or I get out of my comfort zone, right? Or I get 7 hours sleep, or I watch a beautiful sunrise, or, I have a fantastic cafe latte with my favorite barista, right? You redefine success from a different lens, from an intrinsic lens. And therefore, you don't have to wait to be happy. You don't have to wait to be successful, right? And that's really, really important, in particular for athletes, but it's just as important for kids. So rather than doing a to-do list, we get them to do a to-be list, right? And that's where belief comes into things. So when we work with athletes, there's two, as part of owning their story, the two foundational steps is learning self-acceptance, which we just spoke about, accepting our imperfections, by creating a self-acceptance list that most of us have never done before. And the second one is to focus on belief, self-belief. And there's two beliefs in particular that are more important than any other beliefs that you'll ever create. So, and I often tell parents, if you just focus on these two beliefs for your kids, for me, that's success as a parent, right? The first belief is learning to believe that you are worthy, like no matter what, just as you are, yeah? The second belief is to believe in your potential and to trust that if you keep chipping away, just keep working hard, just stay true to yourself, things will work out, right? Things will take care of themselves. When you teach a teenager this, or you teach an athlete this, how much ridiculous noise and pressure and expectation and so forth that just dissipates from their psychology, and they find that freedom just to have fun again, right? Because even if it doesn't work out, that first belief is telling them that it's all good. They're worthy of love unconditionally.
I think people think that if they don't have that sense of control and gripping, then they're not going to achieve their goal. And what is so interesting about the work that you do and how you're trying to educate is it's all about that allowing and that release of control and bringing back that sense of play. Do you know why we as a society are so obsessed with controlling?
Typically through fear, we want to control things we can't control. And we want to make things certain that we can't make certain. So typically the illusion of control, the need for certainty, and this demon of expectations, maybe through greed, maybe through fear of other people's expectations and feel like we're not enough just as we are. Over the journey, you throw in consumerism and materialism. I think that's why the generation today is so distracted by trying to control things we can't control. So if we can identify the things that we can't control, these uncontrollables that are major distractions in our lives, and develop an acceptance list, right? So when I work with a teenager or a professional athlete, it's the same process. What are the things in your life that you can't control? And develop an acceptance list, which creates a boundary to protect you from focusing on all these uncontrollables that are going to cause pressure if you don't let them go, right? Most of us have never done an acceptance list in our lives.
No.
And just to help you out, the three biggest ones, I call them the triple O's, is outcomes, other people's opinions, and the opposition. So if I'm focusing on the opposition, I'm not focusing on myself. But then we have to develop a focus list on the things we can control. Just to help you out there, typically there's only 3 things we can control. There's our intention, which is like, what the goal, what's the strategy, or what's our role. Basically, what do you want to do in this performance, right? There's your effort, how hard you're prepared to work or study or practice or train. And the third one is your mindset. You can control in the moment of, in this moment, I can control whether I'm calm or I'm anxious, whether I'm confident or feeling weak. So you can find that mindset to enable you to focus on those words that reminds you of the best version of you.
Ben, when we start playing sport, it's typically to do with play. That's the reason we start. That's the reason we get involved. It's fun and exciting and it's playful. And play is something it's one of your key values. What is it about play that's so important to us, not just as kids, but as adults? And where do we leave it? Why does it get lost along the way?
I think as humans, we're designed by nature to play, Georgie, like it's pre-verbal. Yeah. But sadly, I think today we've become play deprived, which is very much like being sleep deprived. When you're sleep deprived, in fact, you're probably both sleep deprived, right, with young families.
So very much in my soul.
Yeah. So you both know very well that when you're sleep deprived, you're kind of cranky and frustrated and lethargic, right? When you're play deprived, you're also cranky and lethargic, right? And I'm obsessed because you'd be blown away at the amount of athletes that I've worked with that get paid to play but aren't actually in the play state. They're in the fear state. And getting back to what you mentioned earlier, Liv, about pressure and expectations of others and so forth, because of that, most of us are actually in the fear state, right, rather than the play state. So then the goal as humans is how do we get back into the play state? Yeah. And by the way, play is not table tennis or something you do at an offside. Play is finding the time and space for curiosity, creativity, and experimentation to flourish in this moment. So because play is so unique, in the same way that it's very hard to define love, it's also very hard to define play because it means something different to all of us at any moment of the day. My favorite exercise with individuals is helping them remember an early play memory and remember the words of how that little boy or girl felt in that early play memory. And it is extraordinary when you connect back with your early play memory, how you can bring those emotional states into your life today as an adult. So if I said to you, sorry, it's impossible for me not to get into mentoring mode. If I said to you, Georgie, I'll start with you, Georgie. Can you go back and find me an early play memory?
One in particular that stands out, and it's a little bit similar to what you spoke about when you first came on, was my brothers and I have 2 younger brothers. We used to set up chairs in the backyard, and we would get a football and we would run scenarios through the chairs in the backyard of footy. And that, I can feel myself in that moment, and I can smell the grass and I can see what time of day it was. And we just loved it, and we did it for hours and hours and hours. But there was also for me a definite point where I feel like I put that sort of unstructured kid play down, and I don't know why I did that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's when life became serious and you thought you had to fit into someone else's ideals. And we kind of lost that playful innocence, if you like, in terms of the stories we told ourselves is that life has to be serious now. I have to stop playing as opposed to bringing play along for the ride. Now, Lib, can you give me the same? Can you find a memory for me?
Yeah, I think I am the youngest of 4 kids, and my siblings are a little bit older than me, like you, Ben. And I remember playing a lot by myself. And I think probably the 2 core memories that I have are being in the pool by myself a lot, pretending to be a mermaid. Just loved being in the water. Like it really gave me that sense of calm and joy. And I still get that at 40. And the other one, So my family, my extended family had a cane farm up in North Queensland, and I remember just driving around on a four-wheeler by myself, having adventures. And I guess that sense of trust in myself and seeing what my body was capable of in climbing trees or, building kind of swings out of ropes and things like that. I really enjoyed that sense of adventure, and that's something that I feel like I carry now.
Totally. Yeah. When you go back and reconnect with those memories. Yeah. So this is phenomenal, right? And both of you called out the exact states that we see universally. In that memory, you are happy and joyful and loved and excited and so forth. And for me, there's a huge connection, as I mentioned, between play and love. Because when I asked you the question, what did you love to do when you were kids? In all situations, we're playing, which means the Beatles were only half right. As humans, all we need is love, right? But as human beings, as human doings, all we need is play. So if we want to truly understand what it means to love life, right, and to be in love with life, for me, it's being in the play state. And that's why, for me, play needs a rebrand, because we don't understand just how fundamental it is. And unfortunately, because the world's got more organised and controlling and certain, even play itself has become organised and disciplined and regimented with rules and so forth. And we've lost that natural play state, right? The disorganised or unorganised elements of play. And it happens in grade 3, because in grade 3 in most countries around the world, that's when grading gets introduced, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kids go from learning to play with shapes and play with numbers and play with ideas to extrinsically motivated. Suddenly there's grades, right? And suddenly my parents are interested in my grades. And suddenly I'm not in that grade anymore, I'm in that grade. And kids go from intrinsic to extrinsic, and it just continues on. And at that moment, a 9-year-old boy or girl starts to believe they have to do something or achieve something in order to be someone. And we lose that intrinsic joy of playfulness, and just continues on through, secondary school and then jobs, and, you throw in all these other distractions. And I think that's where one of the core reasons why we're so distracted today.
It's so interesting because I think you're exactly right. I saw it with my oldest daughter who decided to stop playing netball. Not that she was ever, really that into netball, but she specifically decided because she was going to get graded and they were going to get put into different teams and no longer be with her friends that she'd been with for a couple of years. And I wonder, as adults and as parents, how do we ensure that in a world that is organised for structure and for grading and, performance and outcomes, how do we as parents ensure that we continue to allow play to happen, even within the structures of society?
Yeah. Well, one of the fine opportunities for time and space for that creativity and the curiosity, you can have playful conversations at the dinner table, right? Play doesn't have to be organised. You can play games and puzzles. When COVID first hit, suddenly, the world was slowing down and being more present and being more still, and start to embrace uncertainty rather than trying to make things certain. Yeah. And finding more, and that's where vulnerability becomes a strength rather than a weakness, where you let go of trying to have everything set squared and organised, and you start to have playful conversations. And I think reframing what success looks like. So success isn't whether I make the A team or the B team, right? Success might be just trying, learning, growing, getting out of my comfort zone to see what's possible. The 3 motivations that we get people to tap into to take this obsession from organised activity out of it is, what does play look like for me here? Right? And understanding people's play state is really, really important. And we just started that with those exercises that I gave you. But there's other ways to tap into that play history and remind you what play looks like. The second step is finding purpose. And purpose doesn't mean saving the world. Purpose just means the play that I do has a reason, and that reason really matters. Yeah, there's real meaning to it, which might just be playing PlayStation as a family or a board game as a family, right? Maybe tapping people into that play state. Or it could be doing karaoke, right? Just finding more opportunities for an unstructured play. And if you're doing it with other people, friends and family, there's typically purpose to it, right? So there's a reason I'm doing it. That reason really matters. It's connecting me. I'm helping others. I'm in part of a team or part of a family or so forth. So, and the third one is potential. Now, potential is learning and growing and getting out of my comfort zone to realize my potential. And if a young child is motivated by play and purpose and potential, they're less obsessed with the extrinsic motivation of being in the A team or kicking the winning goal, yeah? And they start to connect back with these intrinsic motivations in the most beautiful way. And then for a parent to encourage that, I used to say to coaches, the 6 most powerful words that they can say to their athletes is the same 6 words that parents say to their kids, which is, I love to watch you play, right? Because it's unconditional. Or I love to watch you dance. I love to watch you draw. It's not, I love to watch you kick 4 goals and get in the A team. So it's just bringing back that, I love to watch you play. But the 3 most powerful words that a parent can say to their kids is, no matter what, whatever you want to do with your life, I've got your back, right? No matter what. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to love you no matter what, right? It's unconditional.
Ben, you play this role as a mindset coach for amazing athletes like Ash and Steph Gilmore and Molly Picklum, who are achieving great things but also have this awareness of what their bigger picture is, as you said so beautifully. What do you think the role is of parents in their kids' sporting life? Because we know they have such an influence on their children, and it's the words they use and say around their kids. But how do we frame up for parents what their role is for their kids in sport?
Yeah. Try and help kids become more self-determined than socially determined. So when I was growing up, expectations used to mean things you can control 100%, right? But today, expectations loosely has been defined as something we can't control, but we still want to control it, which is the definition of pressure. So today's definition of expectations is the definition of pressure, which is why you'll always hear those 2 words together, expectations and pressure. They follow each other around like nasty cousins. So the quickest way to remove pressure from your life, and the quickest way for a parent to help a child remove pressure from their lives, to stop them checking out of sport, right, so they don't prove that they're not worthy, is to reframe what is expected of them and what isn't expected of them. And to be clear, a child thinking they have to live up to someone else's expectations is not their life task. Yeah, that's not their responsibility. Like, that's not on them. They can't.
Well said.
They don't even know what they are. But the expectations they have of themselves. What kind of little boy or girl do I want to be? Yeah, they can control that. They can expect that. So they get back into their lane and they stop focusing on other people's expectations of them. And they go on that journey. And if they can redefine success to, I know I'm being successful when I work hard or I train hard or I help a friend. Yeah. So you focus on process, not outcome for parents. You focus on intrinsic motivations, not extrinsic. And what I mean by that is, well done when you fell down, you got up again. Yeah, that's intrinsic, that's resilience. Or well done when you helped your girlfriend who had no idea where she was supposed to stand on the netball court, right? That's purpose, yeah. Or well done when you had to problem solve through that tricky situation, yeah. That's problem solving, that's play. So you reward those things which kids can control, right? Unfortunately, most of us are just rewarding, well done, you won the game. Well done, you got a blue ribbon, right? These are outcome-based. And kids, like athletes, like you mentioned right at the start, Lib, unfortunately, we're learning that our self-worth is predicated on outcome, which is conditional, which is shame. I'm not loved enough until I achieve that. But there's such a different way for kids to learn that they are loved well enough, and success is not outcome-based.
As grown-ups, I think, we're not necessarily just on the sidelines with our kids. And sometimes it's certainly something that Georgie and I have seen just through our kids starting to play sport is that pressure and expectation, as you said, the nasty cousins coming to the fore from parents. And, that might be their kids, the parents trying to live vicariously through their children and perhaps placing what expectations that might have been placed on them as children and how they were conditioned, then now onto the next generation and onto their own children. And I'm certainly guilty of this. I hope that I, try and give that space and, allow my kids to find their path. But how do we as parents really kind of stop ourselves from trying to put that pressure on our kids?
Yeah, maybe we need to redefine what success looks like for us as a parent, as opposed to what does success look like for my child. And if we think success is them being in the A team or the D team, which we can't control, as soon as they're not picked, we're feeling emotional pressure as parents that maybe we've failed them. But if you think about it, what's our role as parents? Our role as parents is to create an environment to help our kids realize their potential. And part of that journey is learning to fall down and learning to get up again with resilience and humility. And part of that journey is learning them to care about others, especially if they're in a team environment, right? So maybe we need to redefine success is I want my child to believe that they're worthy of love no matter what. But if I'm only encouraging them when they win something and do something, what is that teaching our kids? So maybe our definition of success needs a little bit of reframing along the way, so we don't get that ugly parent syndrome that you mentioned, that that unfulfilled desires passed down from adult to child. And when our kids aren't learning a sense of agency to make their own decisions and finding their own joys in life, I got to play football because my dad played football and he believes I've got to play football, right? Or I got to do this. What about we tap into what we find, be curious about what we think our kids love to do and help them to follow their journey, right? And kind of meet them where they're at rather than this transference of what we believe.
Ben, thank you so much for your time. We are just so incredibly grateful for your wisdom and your knowledge. And I will endeavour, and I know Georgie will be the same, just endeavour to play so much more throughout our lives and release that control and let go of that uncertainty. And I just cannot recommend enough. Everyone should go out and buy your book. It is a wonderful insight into all of that knowledge that you've been so generous with today.
My pleasure. All the best on your journey.
That was amazing.
Tell me all your thoughts.
Georgie, I have so many thoughts. I love how he said that we need to redefine play because I just think, particularly as adults, like I know that, this series is so much about children and their connection to sport and that play well strategy. But I just think as adults, we've lost sight of how important play is. And we don't know what play looks like in our lives now.
And it's really hard for us to foster our kids in connecting with play if we can't connect with play.
Yeah, if we don't know what it is. Because we think that play is now structured sport. And that's all it is. And it's not. It's about creating those environments, as he spoke so beautifully about, to have that creativity and to engage in connections with people and relationships and that beautiful connection with love.
I think it's something we can all connect with. It's certainly something I'm going to take home and think about, as you're bashing out the jobs that you need to get done to get through life. How do we inject a bit more fun into it?
Yes.
And how do we role model that for our kids and talk to them about the fact that all this sport that we want them to play, it should be fun.
It's supposed to be fun. That is the thing. This series of Sportish is powered by the Australian Sports Commission's Play Well strategy. Play Well is about creating fun and inclusive sporting experiences for all Australians because everyone has a place in sport. You can find out more about the Play Well strategy at ausport.gov.au/playwell. This series is produced by Deadset Studios and hosted by us, Georgie and Libby Trickett.
Sportish and the Australian Sports Commission acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was made.
We recognise the outstanding contribution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples make to sport and celebrate the power of sport to tell stories and promote reconciliation.